Hello and welcome to the Curiosity and Consciousness podcast. The intention of this podcast is to open your mind, get curious about yourself and connect to the power you hold within. I am your host, Karen Maloney, an inside-out coach, helping you to believe in yourself and manifest your desires. Check out the podcast, available on all platforms, and go to my website, www.karenmaloney.com for all info. Hello and welcome back for another episode. It is me, Karen Maloney, and I hope you had a lovely Halloween if you celebrate Halloween, or like here in Mexico, Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos. So back to routine again, and this week I have another incredible guest for you, and joining me this week is Caz Hitchcock, and Caz is the creator of the gravity technique, which is a bridge between the face-meltingly boring science world and the practical application of how your body actually works. On a day-to-day basis, she's a human movement expert specialising in getting people out of chronic pain and back to the life they love. And this is such a brilliant conversation with Caz, who shares how her speciality really is helping people with chronic joint pain. And as she says herself, she's a product of her own environment, and due to some health issues and having some surgeries from a young age, she developed some complex needs that she wasn't fully able to meet with yoga or other options that were available to her. And she started to focus more on the fascia and the connective tissue body. And she also spent a time in China, in Beijing, and noticed their approach to a more preventative or holistic healthcare as opposed to sticky plastic healthcare that she called it. And it was in 2018 when she was left bedridden for 9 months that she delved even deeper and realized that the fascia is plugged into the brain, and began to look more at mindset and how that mind-body connection cannot be separated. Her aim is fundamentally to help people shift how they move throughout their day-to-day, because she's building them into activities that we are currently doing already in our day-to-day. She also talks about how there is a disconnect epidemic that we're living through, and how we're constantly outside of ourselves, and how important it is to reconnect back to ourselves and be more in tune to our pain signals as well, as opposed to normalizing them. So enjoy this episode, and if you want to find out more about Caz's work, you can go to her website www.gravitytechnique.com. She also has a podcast called the same name, The Gravity Technique, and across all socials as the same. But as always, I will have links from the show notes on my website, karenmaloney.com, and click the podcast section. Enjoy! Hello everybody, and thanks for joining for another episode. And Caz Hitchcock, thanks for joining me today, and I'm very excited to connect and talk to you.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you so much.
You're the founder of the Gravity Technique, and you call yourself a human movement expert, and I love that, and we're going to delve into that. But I really love as well how you say the Gravity Technique is like a bridge between the face-meltingly boring science world and the practical application of how our body actually works. Before we get there as well, maybe even you just introduce yourself and share a bit on your background and what brought you to creating the Gravity Technique.
For sure. Well, I'm a product of my environment first and foremost. So I had my first surgery when I was 13. It just left me with a very beautiful 11-inch scar around my right side for a kidney issue. And the surgery didn't work. So I've subsequently had 3 other surgeries after that. So I started to go a bit lopsided, as you do. And my mom took me to yoga. So that was kind of the start of it. I started off trying to get the ever elusive core strength. And yoga took me so far. And then I started asking sort of more questions, and I had more complex needs. So kind of started to go off and explore different modalities. And I spent a couple of years in China as well. I lived in Beijing. And that was a real eye-opener. You know, this whole approach to preventative healthcare rather than, sticking plaster healthcare, and a holistic approach as well, looking at all the different facets of a healthy lifestyle and looking after your body in all these different ways. So that kind of informed my approach. And then when I came back from China, because of the way that I've taught, I've never had anybody come in and ask for an exercise class. So even though I was trained initially as a yoga teacher, people always limped through the door saying, I'm broken. Can you fix me, rather than I'm here for the yoga class.
Oh, wow,
So I've
yeah.
always worked in remedial. And then as I've gone on in my journey, started to get more into the connective tissue body. I kind of had a look at acupuncture and got into sort of energy medicine. And looking at that brought me into the connective tissue body. And I ended up in the world of fascia research, and then in the dissection lab, taking bodies apart and, really looking at what was going on and how we could apply that to, our day-to-day movement. And what I found was that, fascia research is fascinating, and it's fundamental education for us, we'll say, lay people, but it is face meltingly boring. It's lots of big long words. It's lots of scary. I don't mind taking bodies apart, but I know lots of people that run in the other direction. So with that in mind, it's kind of, how do we take that really useful information and make it into something that's easily digestible for everyone, so that we can, move better and feel better.
Wow. Yeah. And what was that intersection for you between, that science and the practicality?
So the way that we've been led to believe that we move is quite a reduced view. So, what we see in the lab and how we translate that into how we sit, stand and walk is the gravity techniques are a toolkit, if you like, of very easy movements that button into your day-to-day processes. So we've got like teeth cleaning pose and kettle boiling pose, and we work a lot with sort of golf ball rolling and how to support yourself better when you're sitting at the desk. But I found that people don't always, I was seeing a lot of people from the physio when I started my clinic in 2016, and they'd seen the physio, got this sheet of exercises, and they hadn't done them. Nobody rolls their mat out at 6 a.m. Not very many of us do, but, we don't have time to roll our mat out and do, a huge set of exercises. So it was kind of, how do we bring that through and make it something that buttons into our day-to-day life? So almost somebody said that I sneak movements up on them. Bit mean. But, I want to change the way that you lift your kettle to make your tea, the way you get in and out of your car, the way you walk up and down the stairs. So you're doing your exercises without actually, taking the time to do your exercises. So we fundamentally shift the way that you move in the day-to-day.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. I love that, sneak movements up on them. And what I'm hearing as well from what you're sharing so far, and that it is that simple is always better. And this piggybacking, is that the word? Yeah. On things that we're already doing and bringing in, mindset and movement changes to do it differently, that's more supportive to ourselves as well. So I love that. And I don't know, maybe towards the end, I don't know if there's any practical tips or that you can share with listeners, although we're not on video, or direct them somewhere that they can maybe see some of those tips or movements as well, and how they can change how they approach daily tasks as well. And I love what you mentioned as well about your time in Beijing and seeing the difference in how they have such a preventative and holistic approach to healthcare and pain and movement and disease and everything, as opposed to this symptom and sticky plaster approach. So, what has been your experience as well with pain? What is it? Where does it come from? And the possibilities to actually live pain free?
Yeah, so I worked with sort of scar tissue. I've got a genetic condition that's called keloid on hypertrophic scarring. So I produce too much scar tissue, and my adhesions now are quite extensive. They're wrapped around my liver and most of my organs in my right side. And it's kind of been managed by the movement over the years. And then 2018, it kind of all got on top of me very quickly, and I got very, very poorly very, very quickly, as some of the adhesions were wrapped around my liver and my liver was becoming strangled. So 9 months of 2018 completely written off by laying in bed. And what I found was, and that was kind of the quantum leap for the gravity technique, I'd already started to look at the information coming through from the fascia research world on neuroscience and how fascia isn't, and the connective tissue isn't plugged into the nervous system, it's plugged into the brain and is being processed by parts of the brain. And of course, very groundbreaking book, but I think one of the go-to books at the moment, The Body Keeps the Score. But and also When the Body Says No. So we've really started to see that information come through now, and that was exactly my experience. And when I look back over kind of the years, and it was years running up to 2018, I'd had some fairly challenging life events to deal with. And, I got divorced, and, we'd had some bereavement in the family, all of this life stuff. And I'd had some red flags along the way to say, look, you really need to slow down now. And part of my recovery in 2018, so it's what I suffer with is kind of like a fibromyalgia. It's called allodynia, so it's like fibromyalgia for scar tissue. But part of the recovery was, to look at diet and inflammation, but also to look at how I was managing stress, or not, actually, as the case was.
Yeah.
It was, standard woman-y thing, single mom, sort of nothing to see here, everything's fine. It all comes crashing in. And, as I found that as I worked with my mindset, and I started to manage my stress better, and my mind relaxed, the tissues relaxed as well and released their grip on my organs. So now I look at my allodynia as a stress early warning system, or, a stress management system, because it lets me know how well or not so well processing stress at any given time. And, I have to work with my body and be guided by it, and, to eat the right things. And I take, anti-inflammatory herbs, and I work with a herbalist quite closely for that. So that sort of started to come through. And I think that's really where our modern medicine and modern, we say modern, but, you go over to China and they're kind of, pointing and laughing, or anywhere in the East, really. And they're sort of, we've been doing this for centuries. We're just catching up. But that's definitely the way that we have to look. Your mind is a reflection of your body, and your body is a reflection of your mind. You cannot separate the two. And so that kind of changed it out of just the physical realm and started again to look at even more holistic than I thought we were at that time.
Wow, that's amazing. Thanks for sharing that as well. And, again, it's been mentioned so many times and kind of touched on in so many different conversations around many different topics. But this idea of this mind-body connection, and how our body is actually always communicating with us and always working with us, but it needs our input as well. And when these signs come up, they are signs for us that something is not working, something is out of alignment, or like you say, we're really not managing stress or not looking at the things that we need to look at in our life. It's not that our body is giving up or failing, and we often go into victimhood of why me, or why is my body letting me down. And I just love that you touched on that again, that communication, and that it actually is a communication. And that's powerful as well, how you said the fascia is actually connected to the brain, and that was not something I ever knew, but it makes total sense. And again, what we say to ourselves internally has an impact on our body. So I just love all that you shared, and I could definitely go down a rabbit hole with you about the whole mindset shifts. But when you mentioned as well people coming into your yoga classes, and they weren't exactly asking for a yoga class, they were asking, please fix me or help me. What were or are the most common ailments that people come to you with, or aches or pains?
So my speciality is chronic joint pain, and I see that a lot because of our sedentary lifestyle. And it's a bit mean, actually, sedentary lifestyle. I wrote an article quite recently, there's a quote that came out many years ago now, where one of the doctors said sitting is the new smoking. And I've always gone against that a little bit, because you can give up smoking, but if sitting at the desk pays your bills and keeps a roof over your head, you can't give it up. So, the incidences of back pain are rising. I see a lot of frozen shoulders, hip issues. I see a lot of osteoarthritis in hips, knee problems, and surgery prevention for me is very high on my hit list. And a lot of the time, if we just, to touch on your point previously, pain is your body's voice. And pain is your body's call for your attention. It's telling you that something isn't quite right and something needs to change. So with regards to sort of knees and hips, usually it's just the gait, and we have feet that are encased in shoes, and that interferes with how our foot connects with the ground. So if we develop a mature, functioning, well-functioning foot, then the pain in the knee and the pain in the hip goes away, and then ultimately the joint isn't wearing and the surgery isn't needed anymore. And that window of opportunity is there until quite late stage. As I say, I've treated people with stage 4 of osteoarthritis in both hips before, and you could see exactly why the hips had got themselves in such a pickle, because the knees were looking at each other and the toes, the chap was pigeon-toed and his arches had dropped and all of this stuff. And all we did was just sort his feet out. And the knees realigned themselves and the hips sorted themselves out and the pelvis moved. And then the pain went away. And we're a self-healing organism. We're a highly intelligent self-healing organism. The body just needs an opportunity where it's not in an arrangement where it's causing wear to the joints. And that's just habitual and compensatory movement patterns. So once you get down to the real root of what's happening and, put some systems in place, as I say, like teeth cleaning pose, where you start to straighten the feet back up, get them into alignment, and ultimately it's reconnecting with ourselves. When you can feel the weight distribution down through your feet, you can feel where the weight is heaviest and where there's no weight at all. So once you sort out and we reestablish a even weight distribution down through the feet, then the body can sort itself out. Yeah. And the body literally does thank you. You got out of the way, and now let me do my thing. So actually we don't have to do as much as we think we need to do. Yeah. It's devastatingly simple in some ways, particularly when I meet people who have been in severe pain for quite a long time. It's really hard on the emotions and hard for the mental state when you're stuck in this perpetual cycle. And then to just say, well, shift this and shift that, and it's just boom, it's just gone. Is that for some people it feels a little unbelievable, but it's kind of how the body is,
Yeah. Well, that's been my experience as well in lots of different things and in lots of different ways. And I certainly had that as well, even when it came to mindset and this idea of what I can just change my thoughts. I can just change what I'm thinking or the story I'm telling myself. And it seems so simple that it's like, no, there has to be more to it. But often it is these very simple things and changes that we make that can have the greatest impact. Because again, as you said, the intelligence of our body is incredible. So, and I don't know if I'm following this right, but is a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of your work, but is it really for a lot of people, all of us, to focus on the feet again? Is it really the feet are the starting point for a lot of things?
Yeah, well, that's a broad brushstroke. What's really important, and the why the gravity technique works the way that it does, your skeleton is as unique, well, your whole body is as unique to you as your fingerprint. What we lack in our general medical approach is that we've got this cookie cutter set of exercises, we've got a cookie cutter set of surgeries, we've got a cookie cutter, everything's kind of built around this one head, 2 legs, 2 arms, and a body. And female body looks like this, male body looks like this, and this is how we approach it. And actually that's, in my experience, and certainly being in the dissection lab and looking at different people, over time, nobody is the same. Your bone structures, your skeleton is completely unique to you. The angles that your legs come into your pelvis, the makeup of your spine and the vertebra is completely unique to you. So we treat every individual as exactly that. Whilst there is a commonality in the pain that we are experiencing, your life history is unique. Your experience of the world is unique. Your environment is unique. Nobody else lived the life and is living the life and will live the life that you are. So we have to bring all of that into account. And then most of the time we start with the feet because, they are they're probably one of the common denominators for, dysfunction in the body. But, if you've been sitting at the desk and your head is very forward and, the shoulders are up around the ears, or you've had an intervention, a surgical intervention that's changed the body, or you've had an accident or an injury that's thrown the body in a certain way, then we look at it. But ultimately, it's bringing the body back into gravity, reconnecting with ourselves and restoring that trust connection between the brain and the body. Because when the brain trusts the body can relax. And when the body relaxes, then there's an opportunity for repatterning to occur.
Love that. So important. And yeah, I mean, we absolutely are so unique in our experiences and everything that we kind of bring to the table consciously and unconsciously. It all plays a part. But again, there's always solutions, and that's so important as well. You've mentioned it a couple of times as well, and I've my own reasons why, but why is it important to you as well in your work, this idea of people reconnecting to themselves?
Well, we're living in a disconnect epidemic, aren't we, really? I have a teen in the house, the phone. I am the phone police. I am the screen police. I'm also, the worst person in the world on many occasions when I have to intervene. But we live in an information age. Our attention is constantly called for, not just by the Netflix, but, our attention is called for when we're driving. We're taking in massive amounts of information that can get us on our journey from A to B. We are listening to things, we're being told things, we're watching things, we interact, with people through screens. So we're constantly outside of ourselves, and we are reaching such high levels of disconnect now. And I've really seen this as my client base has grown over the last sort of 15 years. It's seeing people, and they tell me, they just woke up one morning and this thing had just happened. It was just there. But actually, when we start to go back through the history, a little bit like when I got sick in 2018, I was like, oh, I got sick. Where on earth did that come from?
Yeah.
But actually, when I look back over it after the event, you can see all these markers. You can see all these red flag moments. But we're so busy with, as women, with the children and the house and the job and the dog and, all of the, and then self-care for ourselves as well. We end up spinning all these plates, and we live in these times of sort of gross disconnect with our body, and the body, kind of gets, not now, not now, not now. I'll deal with it in a minute. And particularly for my back pain people, they come through the door and they're like, it's so bad, I can't actually put this off any longer. And my first question is, well, how long have you been putting this off for? Why? Why is it, when your body is sort of tugging at your sleeve and saying, I need you, can you listen? It actually has to reach a point where the body's thrown itself on the floor like a 3-year-old and throwing a full-blown tantrum. So we have an ability to dumb our pain signals down as well, to dull our pain signals down. So if you breathe, into your clothing, if you breathe into your underwear, breathe into your waistband, and just notice that for a second, and then just, feel the restriction of your clothes. But 30 seconds ago, you completely forgotten that you were even wearing clothes. It wasn't even a thing. So the brain is constantly looking at, is this uncomfortable for ladies that wear bras? Yes. Is it life-threatening? No. Okay, well, we don't need to look at that right now. And we can do that with low-level pain. So, carpal tunnel or low back pain, you can have those niggles and those nags, and you're sort of not now, not now. But it's a little bit like driving the car with a squeaky wheel. At some point, it's going to be really bad. But we, because our attention is taken in other directions, family and work and all of those things, then, we don't get to ourselves. We put ourselves last on the list. So when we reconnect back into ourselves, we start to take better care of ourselves. And of course, the result of that is when we reconnect back in, we start giving ourselves sort of radical self-care, putting ourselves first, then everybody benefits. Your kids don't catch the sharp side of you because, you're feeling cranky because your shoulders are tearing you down, or you can negotiate better within the meeting that you're holding or the pitch that you're having. Your clarity of thought is there. Pain signals take an awful lot of brain power, huge amounts of brain power, actually, and our energy. They sap our energy and they rob our clarity. So we become more efficient in our lives when we deal with the pain issue that's happening. It brings us more present into our lives, and we feel the benefit of that. My clients see the benefit of that very quickly, but it's kind of grabbing people and going, no, we need to come back into our bodies.
I know. And again, this is something, always touched on. It's we don't have to wait for the, that really squeaky wheel that we can't ignore anymore, or that overly bearing pain or ending up in hospital or whatever it is. We don't have to wait for these moments. There is 1,000,001 opportunities before then to do something. But this is the thing as well. And this is why we have these conversations, because hindsight is great. And, we can look back and go, oh yeah, there were always signs. Nothing just appears out of the sky overnight. Truly, when we reconnect to ourselves and get honest, that's not the truth. Nothing just appears overnight. There's always been little signs and signals. And again, it's the responsibility and the accountability we owe to ourselves as well. Because I know what's happened for me when I got more present. Actually, by being more present, I could be in control of my attention and focus. And I actually saw how much things that didn't light me up or that weren't a good use of my time that I was just doing. So you can really sift through what is priority, what needs your attention and what doesn't. Whereas when we just stay in the on and the busy, we can't kind of see the wood for the trees. It's just kind of like go, 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 and everything seems important. I know you work with a lot of women as well when it comes to perimenopause and menopause. So what are they presenting with to you, and how do you support them?
Yeah, something I wanted to touch on. We are in a pretty naughty culture, and at the moment with this whole, and particularly with the perimenopause and menopausal demographic, is that and it comes through in our commercials, and it's kind of information that's fed to us and comes in through our healthcare professionals as well, that actually being in pain is just a natural part of being 40. Having a pelvic floor that doesn't work post baby is normal, and this normalization of having niggles and nags and aches and pains that you just pop some pills for, or you rub some gel on, or it's this perpetual. It's quite insidious in that it's until you start looking for it, you don't see it because it's just part of our everyday
Yeah,
that you just
part of the
take a
programming.
painkiller. We're here in the UK. We're just coming into winter cold and flu season. And there's already commercials on the TV that you just take this powder or take these pills and get on with your day. Don't rest your body while it's poorly. You just fill it full of some drugs and carry on regardless.
Point.
And you wouldn't do that to your child. You wouldn't run your car into the ground. You would get it serviced and you would look after it. If a loved one around you is poorly, you put them in bed and you let them rest. Women particularly seem to just be like, no, there's, as I say, there's nothing to see here. We'll just keep going. But this normalization of pain, that if you haven't got a niggly shoulder, or you haven't got neck pain, you're obviously not doing it right. And actually, to live in this pain-free, the body's natural pain-free state is, something that's for you when you're 20. And goes away when you're 35, and then that's it. Sort of the slow decline until death. That sounds terrible. Quality of life is really important, and then particularly with working with the perimenopausal and menopausal women, these niggles and nags start to really throw themselves up. There's a significant shift in the connective tissue body as the hormone levels change. And, I hear reports from my ladies of, I woke up one morning and there was a stabby pain in my knee. Where on earth did that come from? Or I woke up and I looked to one side and my neck went crack, and then, something's stuck now. And the slide and glide to the tissues is on the shift. So a lot of what I work with there is getting into education. What happens to your tissues when the hormones start to go on the shift? I was really shocked in 2018. I started working with a herbalist to lower my inflammation. I had a diagnosis of allodynia, so I had this lovely big shiny badge label that I was sporting. I didn't want to take the mind-bending drugs. There's some really heavy-duty painkillers involved. I had two options through conventional medicine. I could either go on to heavy-duty painkillers, which just made me forget my own name, and that wasn't possible. I had a young child to look after.
Mm-hmm.
But also their other option was more surgery. So to basically take all my organs out, unstick all the tissue, and then put the organs all back in again.
Oh.
This sounded like a really bad idea.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So I started to look at, other routes, what else was available to me. But I was really shocked when the herbalist turned around and said, right, I've given you these herbs, and these herbs to rebalance your hormones because you're clearly going into perimenopause. And I was like, a what? What even is that? I didn't even know what that was. It was like, I'm going into a what? And she said, well, this is the run up to, you don't just wake up on one morning when you're 55 and go, oh, hey, menopause. We're not taught this stuff. Nobody talks about it. So there's a lot of education buttoned into there for ladies. Once you understand how your body works and you've got some idea, and you don't have to get deep like I did with, taking bodies apart and getting into there. And that's what TGT is for. It's what the gravity technique is for. We want to bridge that gap. So we just get you the education that you need. You understand how your body works. Then you're empowered to take responsibility for your own health and well-being. And that's a really great thing, to feel back in control. And certainly with women of the perimenopause and menopause, you just want to feel like you've got some control over something. For many women of that age, because we're having babies slightly later, some of us, we've got 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds, or 15-year-olds with us at this point. So we're navigating raising children and the work, and now our body is doing all sorts of, fun stuff. We'll call it fun stuff in the background. So it's helping you to feel supported while you're navigating that stuff. And as soon as you know what your body's up to, you're like, right, then I do this to support myself, and then everything else just flows much better.
Wow. Yeah, always finding other ways sometimes, like you in your own experience and with your own health challenges, finding your own way as well, being unafraid in one sense to try something different, to look for something outside of the mainstream. That's really empowering as well. And just so people don't feel afraid if they choose to take a different path or to look at something different, it's totally okay to get information on whatever we feel called to, and then we still have our ability to discern what feels right for us. And that comes back to our uniqueness as well, because nobody truly knows what will support us. Yes, there are lots of different things, but we need to try it out for ourselves to ultimately know what is best for us as well. And, just because you mentioned it as well, I'm really curious of what is happening in the tissue or the connective tissue body.
So the hormones, so fascia, the connective tissue body. So we've got we've got muscles and bones, and then and all the other systems, and they are encased in this cling film type material, and it's called fascia. And it is high levels of collagen and elastin. And of course, collagen is really affected by the changes in the progesterone, estrogen, and our collagen levels significantly drop. So there is a change to the tissues. I'm always reluctant to say that they become, there's a stiffening to the tissues because they are movement driven. But the self-perpetuating cycle that we have is that if something hurts, we reduce our range of movement. And because we've reduced our range of movement, we get more stiff and then it hurts. And we reduce our range of movement and we get more stiff and then it hurts. And then we get it stuck in this cycle. Whereas actually fascia, it needs the slide and glide of the interfaces so that those, that cling film casing interfaces with each other between muscles over muscles and muscles over bone, and and through the joints, same thing. They're just different viscosities, so they need the slide and glide to self lubricate. And if they're not moving, then they get a bit stiff and a bit sticky. So the analogy that I use is coconut oil. If you have the jar of coconut oil, when it's cold and it's immobile, it solidifies. But if you scoop that out and put it in the palm of your hand and give it some nice circular movements and some warmth, then it turns to this beautiful, slippery, viscose liquid. It's exactly the same as the interstitial fluid between the muscle interfaces. So, when it's cold and it's immobile, it gets a bit stiff and a bit gacky. But when we introduce that circular movement, that we let the body be relax into gravity, we let the bones relax into gravity, and then we look to make some circular movements through the joints and through the muscle interfaces, then everything starts to lubricate itself, everything becomes free, and everything starts to move in the spirals that it's created in. So that's kind of how I would describe it. It's a bit geeky.
Wow, I love that. I'm glad I asked. And what a beautiful analogy with the coconut oil as well. I think people will be able to relate to that. And probably now is a good time to see if there are any practical tools or tips you can leave people with, even, if it does come to a sedentary lifestyle or just in general, for general, more that lubrication going on internally.
Absolutely. So, the best thing that you can do is trying to think, hips or shoulders. The easiest thing to do is to feel the weight down through your feet. So, when you look at your feet and see, are the toes pointing in towards each other? For a lot of us, we've got one foot that sticks out to the side, and we want to bring that foot in so that we've got, big toes in the inside of the heels in line. And then just notice where your body weight falls. So for a lot of us, we're back in the heel with the knee locked in. So can we unlock the knees and then start to distribute the weight evenly between heels and toes? And this is great for knees and hips and lower back and, pelvic floor. Because if we're sogging through, it's a technical term, by the way, sogging. If you're sogging through the feet and the arches are dropping, that directly impacts your pelvic floor. Pelvic floor is not firing as it should be. So we start to feel the inner and outer edges of the feet, the long little toe side. And when you pull down on the outer edge of the foot, that lifts the arch of the foot and then lifts the knees out to the sides ever so slightly. And then that allows the pelvic floor to lift, the tummy lifts in, and then the pelvis starts to reset itself at the top of the legs. So that's teeth cleaning pose. But I'm on my podcast quite a lot doing gravity techniques, and on YouTube and on my Instagram live a lot of the time. So I'd like everybody to be doing gravity techniques in their day-to-day. Well, just because it makes you feel better.
Absolutely. Why not? What a fantastic conversation. And yes, please share where people can find out more about the gravity technique and where you share more of your techniques as well. And if they wish to work with you, please share where they can find out more.
Sure. So www.gravitytechnique.com. If you sign up to the newsletter there, you get your very own little gravity technique masterclass. I can't remember which one's in there at the moment. I think it's posture analysis. So it teaches you how to analyze your own posture and do something about it. But as I say, my podcast, I do a free gravity technique exercise each week, and over on Instagram, Gravity Technique, and over on Facebook as well. Omnipresent Gravity Technique in my little corner of the internet.
Brilliant. Amazing, Caz. And like that, I will share all links as well from my website, from the show notes, directly to all your links. And that little freebie as well sounds fantastic. So yes, people should definitely sign up for that. And one last question that I'm really curious about. Where
Sure.
did you go dissecting bodies?
Actually, it's really difficult. It's actually much easier over where you are. Very difficult in the
I'd
UK as
imagine. I was like, how in God's name do you get into a place to go dissecting bodies if you're not training medically?
Yeah, absolutely. So for non-medical professionals, I mean, you can't get in there, just as a complete lay person. You do need to be a therapist of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
In the UK, as I say, it's quite difficult to do that as a non-medical professional. My lovely teacher, Julian Baker, runs Functional Anatomy, a company called Functional Anatomy. And he really is driving for, if you're working with bodies, whether you're a yoga teacher, whether you're a Pilates teacher, whether you're a manual fascial release practitioner or a massage therapist, if you're touching bodies, if you're moving bodies, you're working with people in exercises, you need to know what's going on inside a body. It can't just be, it's like me trying to describe to you, if you've never had a strawberry, what a strawberry tastes like. You can read books all day long. It was a complete life-changing, game-changing experience for me the first time I did it. It everything I'd read in books just got chucked out the window. It really did. It's such a game changer. One of my teachers is in Boulder, Colorado. He's Tom Myers, the guy who came up with anatomy trains. So he runs dissection courses. That's probably from my little UK brain, that's probably like 2 miles up the road for you.
Yeah. Bit further, but yes, much closer than back home in Ireland or the UK. But yeah, that's really fascinating. But it was just something in the back of my mind.
Very quickly, if you are interested in the dissection and looking at fascia, my other teacher, Gil Headley, is on YouTube, and you can look at his work for free. He streams through there all the time. So yeah, if you are interested in deep diving into that and how the body works, that's a really great free resource to get started with.
Cool. Amazing. Thanks for sharing. And thank you so much for joining today. It was a really interesting and fascinating conversation. And I just wish you continued success.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. And before you go, I would love to ask you a massive favor. If you enjoyed this episode or any episode of the podcast, I would love for you to leave a short review on Apple Podcasts to help it grow. If you could do that, I would greatly appreciate it.